I'm Emma Philpott. I'm here at Cliffe Equine to watch two dissections today, one of the head and one of the back. I'm a massage therapist for humans, not horses, but I have horses myself, so obviously I'm going to find it so interesting for that. But also, although I've seen human dissection, I imagine in a lot of ways it will be quite similar. And it's good and just interesting to see and meet loads of new people, all in different industries, which will link with mine. Personally, because I love horses, obviously, but also with my business. So that's pretty much why I'm here. So I'm looking really forward to it.
That's all right, yeah.
I'll go drink wine at the same time.
It's not very sterile.
So this horse, obviously slightly larger. This is kind of small horse, large pony. So this horse has had a lot of the muscles taken off. It's quite interesting. There's actually quite significant lighter mass just without muscle. So it's quite interesting how much mass of muscle there is taken. So looking on the outside of the horse's head, so we've taken off the skin. So what we can see is we've got various, the red bits are the muscles. But starting off on the very outside, you can see here we've got these very fine, pale lines running down through the face. And that's the facial nerve. And the facial nerve basically is just underneath the skin. And what's sort of interesting about the facial nerve is it actually varies very significantly horse to horse of where those actual nerves and what they kind of divide and separate and kind of fan out, coming from the spot just below the ear, and that's where the nerve comes out through the skull and fans out. So on the back of this skull here, we've got the parotid salivary gland, produces lots of the saliva. Horses that come in with big glands at the back base of their ears after eating a lot of grass in the summer, this is the gland that swells, and lots of potential reasons for that. We probably think that actually we're affecting how much saliva is flowing from it. It's not flowing as quick as we're getting production of saliva, and that might be actually down to the head position, actually affecting some of that. But from this parotid salivary gland, we have a duct that runs right underneath the jawbone, comes up here and comes into the mouth and supplies a lot of saliva. So it's also quite an important structure when we come into looking at bridles and tack. So moving on, so from the nerve, this is the facial nerve running across the front. What you'll see is we've got the other side, and you can see it. It's probably easier to sit that way and show you. So what we now have is we've just stripped back a bit more of the fascia, so you can see some of these muscles. So this muscle here is a very small muscle. That is the levator labii superioris, which is just a fancy name for a muscle which lifts the nose and helps dilate the nostril. And you can see if I just pull on that, how that affects the nose position. And it comes down to a fine tendon as well. This is all part of the dilation process when horses is galloping and moving fast and actually clearing the nostrils by using that muscle. The other muscle we've got here is this big cheek muscle. Sitting on the side, we've got this what we call the buccinator, which is just a big muscle which is there on the side of the cheek. And there's some real job of that is just to help keep food pushed into the mouth, because obviously without it, food would bulge out to the side. And we've had old ponies with food packing, and it bulges out there, this gets pushed out, and that muscle can't compete against the bulging of food that's getting packed between the teeth. That's the normal muscle. Running down the very bottom, you'll see this other muscle here, which is actually a depressor, helps bring the lip down. And that's just another little muscle there. So when we start thinking about actually where our bridle sits and noseband sits, or cavison or drop, we can then start thinking about what might be causing problems on there. Moving on from there, we've got this big cheek muscle. This is called the masseter. This is the main powerful muscle helping shut the jaw. So as well as on the inside here, you see this one, I've taken that away. So I think the first thing you see this is the facial crest, which you would normally see. And you see the facial crest running straight down there. We come straight down, so we've got this great deep muscle. So this masseter muscle is a huge muscle. It takes quite a job to peel that all off that face. So large, powerful muscle. And on the inside, we've got the pterygoid, which is another muscle right on the inside. This one we've cut to help us disarticulate the jaw, which we'll show you later. There's a large, deep muscle that sits inside, and those are very large, powerful muscles that cause great pressure in closing the jaw. The opening muscle, to open the jaw, is mainly by what we call pterygoid, and this is the digastrus, which is this muscle in here. So the opening muscles, although we then have another muscle right at the top, you see I've dissected out here, this is the temporal muscle. And this muscle mainly actually closes by working on this pivot of this process of the mandible. There is a little bit of that will help open as well. But the opening muscles of the horse's mouth are very, very small. The closing muscles are very, very big and powerful. Not really surprising because of the way they're adapted to eat grass and huge, powerful chewing. So, taking off the other bit of this muscle, when we start looking underneath here, and this is why we're going to talk about Tack, underneath this muscle here we have this nerve. So we've got a little hole in the skull here, and out from the skull we've got this very large, broad nerve called the infraorbital nerve, which is part of the trigeminal, which is mainly the sensory part, so this takes sensation from the lips and the teeth, but also then can be irritated by badly fitting tack and nose bands. So this is lying underneath this fine elevator muscle, and we can find that, and you can feel the hole if anyone wants to have a problem poke. But it's really sort of halfway between the distance from this nasal-incisive notch, this notch in the nose, and the facial crest, halfway, and then just slightly further back. You see it sitting there, so we can then feel it just sitting underneath. If I put pressure on the nose bands, you see just by touching that muscle, pulling on that tendon, so you've got now a talking head. Yeah? What do you think to it? Okay, not sure. So, the concern is obviously with any tack, we have the ability to put pressure on the facial nerve. We have the ability to put pressure on these muscles, but also onto the infraorbital nerve. So you've got these nerves very close to the skin surface, or just underlying where the nose band will sit. The other issue we've also got is the other nerve running underneath, where, especially after using a drop, there's another nerve running out of the skull, sitting here, just below, underneath this other depressor. We have the mental nerve, which supplies the lip and the teeth, and any sort of drop nose band potential to cause pressure on that as well. Any thoughts?
So, obviously with nose bands then, if you've got a flash on it, it needs to be slightly higher anyway to stop it pulling down onto the cartilage of the nose.
Yeah, it does.
Is it better to, if you don't use a flash, to have it slightly higher, like right below the cheekbone, or have it lower?
Sorry, to have the normal cavesson nose bands. So I think the answer is that you're not going to get it away from those nerves, even by high or low. So I don't think actually the position actually makes that much difference. There's more to the pressure. And then you've got to start thinking about some of the tack and some of the bits then working on nose pressure or nose band pressure, how that's then causing discomfort.
So the studies that they've done, I don't know if we're allowed to say that, Fairfax. So obviously they're saying that the drop and the grackle are kinder because of the less pressure. That's quite interesting when you're saying about the drop noseband nerve, and also they're now saying that the crank is better than the cavesson because the crank distributes pressure evenly.
So I think anything that distributes pressure more evenly is going to be beneficial.
Yeah.
And what is it? The Fairfax has the bridge that stops that close pinching at the top.
Yeah.
So that would also stop some of that pressure on those top parts of these nerves and muscles at this point. But in essence, it's all to do with the other structures as well.
Yeah.
I think it has the potential.
Essentially, if you could ride without a noseband, probably that's better.
Yeah.
My horse was saying, because he was a nightmare, everyone told me the same old thing, tighten the noseband up, just keep tightening the pressure. And actually, we took it all off, and I literally have my noseband just so it's there for looks, but it's on the lightest hole, you can literally put your whole hand, and he's so much better. And he rides so lovely, and sometimes he opens his mouth a little bit, but he doesn't actually do anything with that. But he just automatically trained.
Yeah.
He might be quite sensitive.
Yes.
Like compared to a lot more, just people have done that for so long.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that it literally made so much difference.
We run a horse rescue in France, and we have horses that have been through lots of various issues, and in our contract is no noseband.
Interesting. Yeah. So we'll come and talk about bitting, which obviously becomes part of that whole process a bit later. We come to do the teeth. I think that's a whole. Yeah, they've got to work in unison. They've got to be a process. Got to work together, and you can argue to the cows come home what's right and what's wrong. Actually, it's trying to every horse is different and every horse goes better. And my comment is trying to find what's right and making sure you're tacking and hitting the horse for the right purposes is more important than trying to find the most strenuous or the most. Again, are you looking for control, or are you looking for signal, or are you looking for? I think there's a danger that, especially a lot of our clients think that doesn't work. The horse is being difficult. I've got to get something more severe. That's just like the thing that drives me insane. You're not looking for something more severe. What's a more severe bit than this? The bit you should be using.
The electric fence attached.
I've tried hackamores as well and had problems with hackamores because after a couple of uses the horses actually started to say, I don't like that, this is too much pressure.
Exactly.
And it was much, much worse than a bit, in actual fact.
So, I guess the other interesting point, we're talking about the trigeminal ribral nerve, we're talking about head shakers. Head shaking is a whole different discussion in its own right, and thousands of causes of head shaking. But we know that we now believe one of the main causes of head shaking is trigeminal neuritis, or irritation of the trigeminal nerve. And the trigeminal nerve is this nerve, and it starts at the back of the eye here, and it comes from the brain, comes in through the back of the eye, through the sinus, out here and down to the nose. And we now think, due to airflow or irritation to that nerve, we're getting this irritation to that nerve. And humans have this condition known as trigeminal neuritis, which has caused itchiness and intense pain inside their sinus. We now think that causes a lot of problems in horses. Have the ability now to actually nerve block, but no local anaesthetic in there or further back, down underneath here, to block that nerve, and stop these horses will stop head shaking. Because you take away.
What was it called, the procedure?
The PET, the electric currency, good question what it's called, I'm trying to remember its name. It's basically, you're using electric signal, electric impulse to reset that nerve. That's what you're trying to do.
I read a dressage horse and they thought he was a head shaker and it was trigeminal nerve. And then they CT scanned him and he fractured, could have been a paracondyle or something high up. And that was it was non-union fracture. So after 6 months, and it was obviously irritating the nerve, which was anyway they removed it and stopped the head shaking.
Exactly. So they say there are thousands of causes of head shaking, and one of them is thought to be this, and one of the treatments has been using that electrical stimulation to basically stimulate that nerve, and seems to have about a 60% success rate. It's a very large joint. It is it's obviously one on both sides, and you can see the joint sitting in here. If anyone wants to come have a look, and I will open it up properly in a minute with the scalpel blade.
No, carry on, that's fine.
Come have a look, you can see. So what you'll notice is there's little soft cartilage, and I've cut this bit, so I've opened into it so we can expose into the joint. So what you'll notice when I open it up properly is actually what you're seeing on the outside here is only a fraction of the actual joint. The joint is very much like my finger. It runs deep into the hole. And I'm now just touching the far end of the joint. It's a huge joint. And how teeth. If you look at this horse, it's got very sharp teeth. I'm going to do it the other way now because the tongue is in the way. So we have a horse that's got very sharp teeth. It's had very poor dental care, or no dental care. So when in the wild, and through evolution, horses are designed to eat, and during evolution they are designed to have dental work. Horses should look after their own teeth, they should self-care. And that's because when they're eating food, they're kind of designed to be grazers. They're designed to eat bark, roughage, nettles, brambles, bracken. They're not designed to eat nice lush grass, they're not designed to eat hay or hard feed. So we know from looking at motion sensors placed in horses' heads that if you give them hard feed, they'll eat like that. If you give them hay, they'll eat with slight circular motion. And if they eat very good grass, they'll have a much better circular motion. So they'll come across. So what will happen with eating very coarse food material, the outside edge of the top teeth will come in contact with the lower teeth. And then they'll have this power stroke. So they'll open their mouth, place it down, and then they'll crush food with their powerful muscles. And what that will do is that will leave the whole of the grinding surface come in contact. So the whole of the grinding surface, the whole of the occlusal surface will be worn down. So as the teeth are up, the teeth will be worn down evenly. And what the horses will tend to do is they will eat sometime that way round, and other times eat that way round. They used to think it was like one or two that way and one or two that way. Some horses will eat for an hour one way around and then change. And I think it's something crazy like 64,000 shoe cycles for a kilo of hay. It's just ridiculous. Yeah, I can't remember. It's just, it's just that they are having so much wear day long. So the important thing is the tension of the mandibular joint. It allows that lateral motion, but actually it allows the motion of the lower jaw forward and backwards, and that's normal. So, and if anyone's been unfortunate enough to have people telling them about how their back teeth are affecting the incisor gait and the incisor bites, and someone's gone and said, "I'm proud of you horse, look how undershot or overshot it is." And you bring a horse's head out forward, and like that, and you tuck its head in, it's going to do the opposite, it's going to pull back in. Now, the head position will change the position of the lower jaw compared with the rest of the jaw. So then we talk about lots of questions is then, if you imagine you've got a horse that has got its mouth, you'll see these teeth naturally sort of interlock, they have ridges in them. If you then have the main mouth being shut tight, there is the potential that when a horse then has a tight noseband on, it doesn't allow that rostral or forward motion of the lower jaw, and horses then become uncomfortable. And I think that's pretty common. So that's again, or should we be shutting horses' mouths shut when the horse are working? Should be allowing a little bit of forward and rostral and forward motion. So I think the important thing is we're talking about the temporomandibular joint has the ability to create huge amounts of mobility naturally in the horse's head. So I'm going to now open up the temporomandibular joint a bit more.
But do you think over tight nosebands are a cause of TMJ pain and it's just that?
Yes.
And that's enough?
Tension. Yeah, I think TMJ pain. But end of the day, it's tension. And I think we've got to understand why and what we mean by TMJ pain, which is a whole, and I'm sure some people have their own views.
Because naturally you don't stand there with no horses naturally stand there with their teeth. So I suppose by putting their noseband really tight, you're actually making them close their mouth completely.
I always think they must feel really claustrophobic too, because the minute you try and shut something yourself, you want to push against it, don't you? So I just think that it must be horrible.
And I think, well that's why a lot of horses actually fight more.
Yeah,
not
exactly. Yeah, no, I agree. I think the general consensus these days, most people, like here, is, but then you'll go to some yards where they think it's great.
It's routine. They don't even wait to have a problem.
No, yeah.
Clap them up,
Yeah.
that is the norm, and they'll actually say, well, no, if we keep the young horses
They won't
tight
develop
shut,
a
they'll
problem.
never learn a problem.
It's the easiest thing to get big. But that's the meniscus, or the cushion. And we'll notice it has this kind of S shape to it. It's not completely flat. It's not, so it sits there, and that allows that rotation.
Can they
So
get
that will-
damaged?
It can be damaged, and I have had one horse I've sent for CT scan. I've sent back probably 8 or 10 horses in the last 5 years for CT scan with suspect TMJ pain question mark, and only one has ever come back as anything significant. So that's just, so you can get tears in them, they can become damaged. But I think my query being is that my comment would be that you're dealing, and again, people often talk, therapists often talk about, oh yeah, you can tell, I want to touch. That's really painful. It's painful as TMJs. Now, what they're doing is they are kind of touching on the tip of that cartilage with their finger pressure. So in a horse, which is somewhere, and this has got, so, theirs is somewhere, the TMJ in there, somewhere over that line, they're somehow managing to create pain and cause resentment by touching that horse's TMJ. Now, I think if a horse has got tension in that area, I think the first thing to say is you've got a lot of soft tissue over that area, and that soft tissue is overlying quite a thin bit of bone. So actually, you touch yourself with a nice soft bit of bone, it doesn't hurt too much. You touch yourself where the soft tissue is over narrow and it's over a bit of bone, it's going to cause some discomfort. It's quite easy, I think, in a horse to put a bit of pressure in there and make a horse react. So I don't think that can cause an assessment of a TMJ mobility or pain or function. I think, yes, how mobile all that is. Yes, they're all connected in that area by soft tissues, you know, and actually, is it TMJ itself is actually the problem with the joint, or is it the problem with the soft tissues around it? So I think, from my experience, having seen horses and sending them to CT scans, having a problem with the TMJ is genuine disease is rare. I think probably if horses have tension out area, it's probably soft tissue, muscle.
Obviously, say if you've got a tight brow band, for example, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I guess you've got potential, but I think it's pretty well protected in there. And I think yes, but what's it, you know, it's not the TMJ it's causing pain on, but you know, but actually has the horse had a pole injury? Has it got muscles? And yeah, I think that's.
There was Facebook.
Yeah.
Was that it was a case of a horse that had a bone spur on its TMJ, and it had taken them a year to find it. So have you ever seen that? I mean, I presume it was genuine. It was Facebook.
But I guess.
I think they medicated it. The horse wouldn't take a contact, couldn't find it, and then.
So, in essence, I X-rayed a few, and I remember X-raying one where I was querying whether it. And I think the problem is when you X-ray the TMJ, the way you need to X-ray it is kind of you put a plate on the horse's head and you take an X-ray up like this, and you are trying to see this tiny little bit edge of the joint. All you do is really see the very edge of the joint. And I remember taking one X-ray thinking, oh, that looks a bit odd to me, and it doesn't quite the same as left to right. Send it for CT scan again, no, it's normal. So, don't know. So my query is, I don't think X-rays.
I think I remember commenting saying, how did it get diagnosed? Because it was really interesting. I think she just said ultrasound and then they medicated it. Don't know.
Well, I have another interesting story of today. I've been asked to go and medicate a TMJ by a client who was seen at the veterinary osteopath. Have you heard of the veterinary osteopath?
Yes.
So I said, I'm not just going to medicate a joint without knowing the story, was this history. Sent history through which described him, a vet who was also an osteopath, stating they'd examined it, made a diagnosis and would like her vet to go along and give him medication. Well, that was my question, I've now got on social media. And then the comment is that horse had pole pain, and that was caused by the TMJ, but he's manipulated under sedation, and he has moved its displaced hard palate. So if anyone knows anything of seeing a skull, the hard palate being this bit here. So I suggested on social media, on a closed group, I put a question out there, what would everybody else do as vets? Would you go? And everyone says no, he's a quack, don't do it. I'll tell him to go and get a proper diagnosis. So anyway, he then said, look at me, and this is the reasonings. And so anyway, none of it made sense. But I said, how about you do a head dissection, put the horse's head in a vice, and with a hammer see if you can derotate its hard palate. I'm not sure you physically can. You know, it's a solid fused structure. So anyway, and I think that's someone who's a MRC head. Yeah. I'll tag him one of you.
Facebook buddies now.
Yeah, that's it. So.
Invited him.
Should have done. I think he lives up north somewhere.
Come down this way.
In humans, it's like nearly always just muscular anyway, and that's what people get told first, is just to have a bite guard and to massage it themselves. So you don't actually do, like jaw surgery compared to other surgeries.
Yeah.
Yeah, you rarely hear of people. I mean, loads of people have got TMJ pain.
Yeah, you massage it. And you
I
do
think
like
the muscles, and I think there is plenty of syndromes where people end up with this kind of lockjaw type pain.
Yeah, and the pterygoids.
Or
Humans just get in and out, it's so much better.
But in essence, that isn't to do with a disease process of the TMJ, it's to do with all the structures around it.
As well. We would sort of do tongue tractions for TMJ problems.
Yeah.
By palpating the tendons. Yeah.
Which is interesting, the whole control, that's
Getting release and all because of the attachments and where they come up.
Okay,
so there's a certain amount of horses that will allow that and quite a lot.
Yeah. So we can talk. We can go on and talk about that.
Yeah.
So we talking about hyoid apparatus, which is a whole. So I was asked earlier, well, where is the hyoid bone? And I said, well, there isn't a hyoid bone. There's lots of them. It's a whole structure of hyoid bone. But the one we've got here, you can see, this is the stylohyoid, which is the big hyoid bone which attaches to the base of the skull. And in essence, the hyoid apparatus is I wouldn't say it's all paired, but there is basically connects the skull to the larynx, which is here, the voice box, and to the tongue. And it's important within horses swallowing and gag reflexes and breathing, so the ability, particularly the soft palate, to unlock from the epiglottis when the horse is swallowing or working. And so if you take horses which have, race horses where they displace their soft palates, where the soft palate gets in the wrong place, affects the breathing, the common way to deal with that, the simplest way to deal with it is all tongue tie. So they take the tongue and they tie it with a bandage so they can't be pulled backwards. Because we know if you get on what doing it now, so if you stick your tongue out, it's very hard to swallow. It is quite uncomfortable to swallow. You've got much easier when you retract your tongue and find that much easier.
We can sort of.
You can do it, but it's not very. So that's the theory behind it. So I guess what you're trying to do, if you imagine when you retract your tongue, you are going to change. Well, that doesn't actually have any involvement in the TMJ at all.
So I think it's about all you can affect around.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think is there any evidence that tongue traction or manipulating the hood has any effect? Those are huge muscles that are moving these structures, and I suspect that you are not going to be able to generate that kind of forces and pressure to do with this hole between the teeth. So you can see I can get food. There's food packing in there. So if anyone's heard of diastemas, these are diastemas. So diastemas are almost certainly the most painful dental condition a horse can have. More painful than a tooth abscess in a horse. So has anyone had a piece of food stuck between their teeth overnight? Melted it out, a bit of bacon, and seed from a fruit stuck in there.
Teapins.
Teapins,
Yeah, little brushes. Yeah.
Yeah, good luck doing that.
You're up your elbow.
You can design the horse.
I'm sure they've done it.
Yeah, So, we've got a condition here where food is getting stuck between the teeth, and I think it was Paddy Dixon in Edinburgh, who was the sort of godfather of modern dentistry, described it as like a piano player having splinters under their nails. That's what, every time a horse eats, that's what it's going to be feeling like. More food is being pushed down into that gum, and you can see, even with my, this is also something, you can see I can actually get movement of the tooth with a pair of scissors. And that's because going down here, the periodontal ligament will be very severely damaged.
Is that just from poor dentistry or is that genetic?
So there's a bit of both, because with good dentistry, there wants to be left like that. So why has that occurred? So once food starts getting in there and doesn't come out, that's going to perpetuate the problem. But actually with this horse, I think you can see how this last tooth is angled, and I think you can just about see the angles of the roots. So you've got this natural process where the teeth are coming out like that, and they're leaving to a sort of triangle of food in the bottom where food's getting in. We call a valve diastema. But if the horse also has diastemas elsewhere. So this could also be genetic and age. This horse is probably in its early to mid-20s, just looking at the sizes. So this is possibly down to the fact that the teeth get nearer their natural roots, the teeth get narrower, and therefore naturally teeth gaps will occur.
If it is genetic and then predisposed to it, do you just treat them more regularly?
So what do we do to treat it?
Yeah.
Firstly, actually just filing these sharp edges off, and what you'll find is overlying, particularly this one, you can see you've got a ridge in this tooth here. That ridge is pushing food into that gap and exacerbating the problem. So we take that ridge down to try and decrease the chance of food being naturally pushed into that gap. Flushing and cleaning it out. Then what we can do is we can either, depending on how severe it is, we can pack it. We can put various things, from like dental impression material in there, antibiotics, and we can even put like filling material in there to try and stop food getting in there. That's obviously a temporary fix. But the idea is that's allowing, while the food's not getting in, allow hopefully the gum to start healing.
Does the gum recede back up?
The gum doesn't recede back up, but what you hope to do is get actually deep into where the periodontal ligament starts healing. The gingiva doesn't heal, but you're trying to get some filling in there. Other options are you can widen the gap. If you've got room to make this gap from being a narrow gap to a big gap, stop allowing food to get in and then out again. The other thing is actually when it gets as bad as this, you would then consider actually whether you should be extracting a tooth to make that gap really big, take away the painful tooth. And I would suspect that had we seen that, we would have probably rasped the teeth, flushed it, packed it, with a view to reassessing it in 3 or 6 months' time. If it's not any better, think about root extraction.
10 goes by.
You can only accurately age up to what, the age of 6, 7?
Yeah, spot on. So why can you age horses by their teeth?
Because they erupt at different times.
So teeth erupt. So horses' teeth, if anyone's been to the Natural Museum in London, and been to the top floor and seen all the equine skulls, what you'll see is the progress of, however many billion years ago when, horses were, the Ethereum horse was, a little tiny rabbit-type sized animal that basically evolved, and when they were tiny little animals that they had dog-like teeth or human-like teeth. And through evolution they've changed and developed these teeth, they've got these big elongated skulls, and they've adapted to eat, to be good true herbivores and eat very fibrous material grass. So various things with that, they've developed these teeth which are what we call hypsodont, which means long-crowned. And by that, as we have a young horse's teeth, we have these very large teeth. Everyone's talked about these teeth keep erupting. So teeth will erupt around about 2 to 3 millimetres a year. So as those teeth erupt, the teeth are wearing out. So what's happening is they're eating grass, the teeth are wearing out, and if they didn't erupt, they would have no tooth left. So if you look at a young horse and remove a tooth from a 7-year-old, if this was a 7-year-old, these teeth would be pretty much as long as a lower jaw. So you'd have a lower teeth that would be that long, and you'd have upper teeth of similar length. Now that tooth is made up of 3 parts. What we call the clinical crown, the bit you can see inside the mouth, the reserve crown, which is the bit below the gum that's still got to erupt, and then you've got the apex of the root at the very top. So these 3 areas. So what happens as with age, the tooth erupts, the tooth gets shorter, the clinical crown stays about the same length, but the reserve crown gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So if you then look at a young horse as their jaw elongates, you see often these eruption bumps. You see these bumps underneath the mandible, and in certain breeds you can see lumps up high above the top teeth where that's just the bulging of those tooth roots where they're forming. So we've got these teeth that keep on erupting. So the other interesting thing about horses' teeth is, I said, they're not covered by simple teeth, they're not covered by enamel. They're not like our teeth. So our teeth have a very simple structure. They have enamel on the outside, and they have dentine, and they have what's called the pulp. And the pulp is the sensitive part of the teeth, which has the nerves and the blood supply in it. Horses' teeth still have a pulp. They have nerves and blood supply running through the tooth, but they aren't covered by enamel. The enamel is actually a small part of the tooth. So on the outside of the horse's teeth, they actually have cement, and cement is this discoloured and takes up pigment very easily. It's quite a soft material, it's quite brittle, but the reason horses' teeth are horrible colour is not because they haven't brushed their teeth and they're not really pearly whites, it's because they have got cement, and the cement is taking up pigment. So even if incisors will have some discoloration, and that's normal, and that shouldn't be of any concern. We also know that if horses have very static food, so a lot of grass is sitting around there. So occasionally you'll see horses when they've got dental disease, and you look at one side of the teeth, one side of the teeth is very black, or the half palate's very black, and the other mouth is actually clean. It tells you actually they're only eating on one side of the mouth, and therefore there may be some dental disease. If anyone wants to put a glove on, or feel free not to if you're really feeling grey, what you feel is that the cement at the top normally should be quite smooth. But if you come to these back teeth, you've got this real knobbly, rough appearance. Want to feel? Yeah. Go on. Got the gloves. I know, it's sad, isn't it, really? So you can imagine sharp teeth like that, just sitting. I think the other we haven't talked about is sharp teeth, is that when you've got sharp teeth, not only getting those when a horse is tack, if you push on there, pushing the buccinator muscles and all the soft tissues into there, it's going to cause pain. But actually, we think when a horse actually is working and bending, we know if your horse bends to the left, what's happening to all the soft tissues on that right hand side is going to be tightened. Naturally, that's going to create greater stress, therefore you're going to have more pressure put on that area. So we're providing sharp teeth or where the horse wants to bend and flex. So, this rough bit of tooth, any idea what it might be? You know why it's rough? It is rotting. It's decay. This is cemental decay or caries. So, lots of thoughts behind that. We know this is the same decay happens in horses' teeth, can happen usually with cement, but it can, on the top teeth can happen and actually go and affect through the enamel. but this starts usually due to food being static. You can get it with certain types of feed types, things contain a lot of sugar. But if you think about what's happening here, we've got a lot of food that's static stuck in here. So this is being bathed in food all the time, and rotten feed, and that rotten food is being decayed, releasing sugars, releasing bacteria, and that's creating a decay, just the way our teeth would have decay. If you drink lots of sugary drinks and don't brush your teeth in the same way that you was conventionally taught, that's why we get tooth decay. So this is down to food being stuck in that area. What we would do, we would grind them down. You grind them down.
Pack them.
No, you hope you don't get to that point. So what you do is you grind the tooth down slowly, and you observe what's going on with the secondary dentine. Is that pulp? So you want to know what's going on with that black spot, and what was going to happen with that black spot is going to go pale, it's then going to go translucent, it's then going to go red. So you try and stop before you get to the translucent stage.
So you're going to have to monitor that that's quite difficult, isn't it, to do?
I
I
think
suppose
you've got
you know what you do, but what
Yeah,
I
I
mean
think
is you need it in a situation where you can see properly.
So what you would do is that depending on whether you can visualise that tooth or not, depending on how you're working, you obviously need to take a little bit of tooth off, look at the colour of the dentine, decide whether you take more off, flush, use a mirror, carry on. So sometimes if you're working up somewhere you can see quite easily, you can see that, but actually the back of the tooth, the back of the mouth, you'll need to use a mirror and look at that dentine. So it's a matter of actually, so whereas actually sometimes, and I've had a situation where I've had quite a large hook, and I've taken it down in stages, and I'll go back 3 months later, and that's what I've recommended. And then I've had someone else go back in there and go, didn't do enough, what an awful job, taking loads off, don't want one go.
No.
If you keep exposing it, does it die eventually? Because the nerve.
If you keep exposing it, the chances are it will die.
Yeah.
So there is the
Get
possibility
rental,
you get tertiary dentine or reparative dentine if you've just got a small hole, but you've got this sort of battle over the tooth, is that can it repair its surface of its tooth before bacteria gets in?
Yeah.
And then that's a sort of unknown, and there's not a huge amount of follow-up of those cases of knowing how many or what percentage of teeth actually die once you've hit a certain spot.
So can you be more accurate with power tools than you can be with rasping?
Yes, definitely. So you can work with power tools, you have the ability to work on one ridge, individual tooth.
Yeah.
I think with the rasp, you've got to move backwards and forwards, and almost impossible. In about the 1950s, they decided the best way to take teeth out was to anaesthetise horses, they had anaesthetics, drill a hole over the tooth, infected tooth. So they would maybe drill a hole in the bone below the tooth, on working out which tooth it was, or through the sinus, and use, best way to describe it was a punch, it was more like a bolt, big coach bolt, put it over the top of the root, take a great big hammer, bang, bang. So that kind of technique for tooth extraction was carried on until probably the mid-90s, maybe late 90s. And it wasn't until then someone said, how this doesn't work very well. The complication rate of tooth extraction at that time was about 60%. So 60% of surgeries had significant complications that required either repeat surgeries, taking out the wrong tooth, damaging the tooth, having infections of the bone. So it was a big problem, it wasn't very successful. And then somebody suddenly realised, so well, there's got to be a better way. And going back to pre-1950s, particularly in the First World War, horses' teeth were taken out with basically through the mouth, big extractors, and actually there's sort of work going back a long time, many hundreds of years ago, of people doing similar processes, and I think particularly the Chinese doing that sort of technique. But actually it was pretty horrific, because these horses were, probably had poor sedation, no anaesthetics, no pain relief, so they were kind of hobbled and tied up, and there was some, there were some interesting pictures on some of the old textbooks of horses being sort of almost strung up in a sort of stocks where they were head held, where they couldn't move, and army mechs wiggling teeth. But I think now, with that method has sort of come back, I think that's down to the fact that we've got good sedations. We can sedate a horse on its feet and pretty much do anything to most horses. We have the ability to use nerve blocks. I think it's made a massive difference. So if we were taking teeth out of the top teeth, we would potentially block part of that maxillary nerve. If we're taking bottom teeth out, we can go through the mental nerve, or up through here we can block out the maxillary nerve. And using local anaesthetics in the gum, we can pretty much sedate them properly and anaesthetise them properly. And also I think the tools, the actual equipment's improved significantly. And what we aim to do is take out most teeth out through the mouth. And that's really a matter of lifting the gum up, breaking the gum the ligament, the periodontal ligament down that we can on the surface and the gingiva, separating that, and then we use something called dental spreaders. And dental spreaders are just an instrument that sort of sit between the teeth and sort of go into that gap and rock the tooth backwards and forwards compared with the other one, and we just sit and do that for 10 minutes to just help start the process of breaking that ligament down. We then get a pair of forceps that fit nicely on the tooth and sit and wiggle it. And I think where the equipment's improved, I would have said, even as little as 5 years ago, I would have said that's a minimum of 2 hours process in a sort of 6-7-year-old horse. I would say now with better equipment, I'd say, well, it's probably an hour. And that's
Is it
just...
harder when they're younger because they're deeper?
Yeah.
Years ago, I had a horse that had an abscess, so it was probably mid-90s, maybe before that, and it had a big catheter. I can remember picking the horse up, and it had, that was to flush the sinus. So with the young, or do you think that was because they hammer and chiseled it from?
So it depends on whether
it must have been like
one of these back
years ago, and it had a big flap and tube into the sinus.
That's what it was found out. But sometimes we'd still, if there was infection in the sinus,
you'd
we'd
still have to do that anyway.
We wouldn't have the big flap. So we try to get the teeth out through the mouth. I'd say with better equipment that sort of works fairly well. But it does rely on having tooth visible on the inside of the mouth. So these teeth would be nice and easy to take out because you could physically, hopefully, you can get forceps on there. But if you've got a broken tooth, or the tooth is broken below the gum line, or there's nothing physically to grab hold of, we go back to your method. But actually what we now do is a German technique which we cut through the cheek. So what we do is we need to find the best way to cut through this. So we need to work out which tooth it is on X-ray. We want to try to get to the tooth from, let's say it was a tooth here, we need to work out the angle we want to come at the tooth from. And having worked out an X-ray using staples on X-ray, we then put a catheter into the parotid salivary duct by going into the mouth, so we can isolate where that is. By clipping, we try and find where these facial nerves are. We'll draw them on the face, and we'll then hopefully mark the spot where we can safely go through either the setter muscle or through the buccinator, trying to find a nice safe spot we can actually put a scalpel blade in. We make a stab incision, we put a cannula, little canal, into the mouth. What we then do is we can then drill up into the tooth, and then we drill up into the tooth, we then can, well, on X-ray we put a hole right way to the middle of the tooth. We know the tooth is going to come out and is hopefully dead and not going to feel it. We then would put a countersink, we'd drill a thread into the tooth. We then put a long pin that's got a threaded head into it, all the way into the tooth. So you can imagine we've got this horse that's got a big pin coming out, stuck into the middle of the tooth, and then gently we can try and manipulate that tooth. And invariably that's what has at the bottom of that stymon pin is a round disc to stop, and that allows us to put a slotted hammer, and that allows us then to hopefully tap the tooth out. So the horses then that take that out, I would take out probably successfully 80% of the teeth where they've broken. And those we then don't. When we do is come through, and instead of using a great big bolt or a coach to try and damage all the bone, we use a really fine pin and try and get very cleanly onto the root and just tap the root out.
If it's just small amounts left over, the body just push it out. Or do they not?
Rarely
I
when
suppose
they're deep, then you stop healing.
Yeah.
So yeah, unless. So if I had a very old horse, that really comes down to if we would end up with a broken root in there, we might leave it in, and occasionally those will come loose.
Why are you going from the inside just because you couldn't get the space?
Why don't we go from the inside? Because once you've got these teeth, there's nothing to grab hold of inside. You've got nothing physically to get purchase on.
Yeah.
In the fitting process as well, you've got to say, if you have a horse's head, where does the bit go? And the answer is it goes on what we call the interdental space. So we've got a bit that's going to be sitting somewhere in front of the teeth. So we should have a bit that shouldn't be touching the teeth itself. We should have a horse chomping on its bit, and we find a lot of our horses do, and the bit is sitting too far back in the mouth, and the horse is allowed to play with it too far back in the mouth. So in that area is where wolf teeth are. So wolf teeth occur in somewhere between 50 and 80% of horses, depending on which surveys you read. and I think probably what age of horses they're looking at. So I think a lot of horses actually lose their wolf teeth naturally when they shed their caps, their baby teeth. So wolf teeth usually sits in the top, and they sit somewhere in this space just in front of the first cheek tooth, what we call the second premolar. So the actual wolf tooth, or the wolf teeth, are a remnant or residual part of the first premolar. So when these horses were tiny little rabbit type animals, they had 7 teeth. They've adapted to actually have 6, and actually left a bit like our appendix. They still occasionally will have this tiny little tooth that will vary from a few millimetres to perhaps 15 millimetres in size. And they usually come out in a straight line, straight out, sitting just in front there. The problem about wolf teeth is that they sit exactly where your bit wants to go. That invariably, when you've got a bit of wolf tooth there, when you've got a bit in, you often find then erupts up a bit of cheek or something into this space, and that can cause some discomfort. So often horses with wolf teeth probably get some degree of discomfort. The biggest problem with wolf teeth are blind wolf teeth. So occasionally, instead of coming out in a straight line, they come out as an angle, come up, and they don't come through the gum. So underneath this hard palate, on the soft tissue on the hard palate, you have this wolf tooth almost sitting instead of coming down along, and then as soon as you put any pressure on that, that then causes some discomfort on the hard palate, and that then causes discomfort. So we would invariably with blind wolf teeth recommend it was removed. I think there's an issue also with wolf teeth, is that do wolf teeth cause a problem? Are the wolf teeth also causing a problem? So my sort of rule of thumb is if I've got a young horse that's not doing very much, hasn't done much, I would take the wolf teeth out straight away because it's an excuse. If I've got an older horse that's going well, I will leave them. And I think sometimes, and the difficulty is you go to see horses that have got teeth that are a bit like this, really sharp, they've got a wolf tooth, it's not going very well. So, the temptation is to blame the wolf tooth. But actually, if you let the wolf, what we don't tend to do is leave the wolf tooth and do the teeth and go, well, actually, we need to, so we're trying to remove it all and resolve the whole problem. But I think wolf teeth are often blamed as being the problem, when maybe they're not. And again, without some stage, you know what, I'm not going to take the wolf teeth out, let me just rasp the teeth and see how it goes, and I'll come back 2 weeks later and take the wolf teeth out if I need to. I'm not sure I'd be very happy with that.
Do you see many on the bottom?
No, not many. Probably one in 50 wolf teeth. So very common in donkeys and mules. But I have only taken 2 out this year. No wolf teeth. But they always cause problems. They tend to be quite painful.